It's a new obligation for employers to respect a worker's right to live a life beyond work. So it's not an absolute prohibition, but the employer has to think very carefully before they contact the worker outside of work hours. But this is not going to stop them um, getting people in the case of an emergency. It's not going to stop them contacting if there's a need for shifts or whatever. But there is a requirement that any request outside of normal work time must be reasonably based. And
And
so it's starting to put some guardrails around it.
what are the consequences or the penalties for workplaces that go beyond those guardrails?
Sure. Look, there's some pretty big figures in the legislation. For an employer who breaches it, it's up to $93,900 per breach. That's just under $100,000, and for an individual who breaches it, it's around $18,000. So there are some teeth here, but it's important to recognise this is it's a kind of facilitative right. It's not like an absolute obligation on both parties. It's designed, but if there's an employer or a worker who's persistently breaking the rules, then there are some pretty heavy teeth in this legislation.
This has been introduced in other countries. How has that worked?
Look, I've done some quick research on that. The International Labour Organisation's pulled together some data, and it's only been around in kind of formal laws for around the last 5 to 10 years. So it's a relatively new area of labour law. Probably the most advanced form of it is in Belgium, where the workers have the right to form what's called, now let me get the exact right, a Prevention and Protection Committee. Now, that's, from what I can tell, one of the most advanced jurisdictions in the world. Most of the other rights around in other countries are very similar to the Australian formulation, basically saying it's got to be assumed that once you're outside of standard working hours, then basically you shouldn't be contacted. But if you have to be, then there is the capacity to do so. But it hasn't been, there's been no really big comprehensive evaluations yet.
All right, let's move on to gig workers. What will it mean for them to be classified now as employee-like workers?
Right. Yeah, this is actually very important. Probably one of the biggest gaping holes in our system of labour law is between what's called independent contractors and employees. And this has been an area of profound uncertainty and basically a massive get out of jail free card for many employers. Now, this law says they're creating a whole new category of work to try and get around this problem of whether you're an employee or whether you're a contractor. It actually says if you are working off a platform, if you have the characteristics of a gig worker, you have basic entitlements which will be determined by the Fair Work Commission. But once again, these are basic entitlements for pay. There is some capacity for penalty rates if you're working outside of standard hours. But this is all to be determined by the Fair Work Commission. The law itself does not say exactly what will happen. And the Commission itself will set standards and will do so after hearing from all parties. So we've had this before in Australia, and New South Wales, for well over 70 or 80 years, has had long laws around protecting what were called the trucking acts. It protected people in the road transport industry. And there are very strong echoes of these rights coming through here.
Yes, so gig workers have been very vulnerable in the past. Does this go far enough in protecting them?
Look, I'm of the school of thought that labour law has been lagging developments in the labour market pretty badly now for about 30 or 40 years. So I think these laws could go a lot further, but equally, getting a change in labour law is extremely difficult. And the fact that we've actually got a new platform for sorting out these issues is a major advance. It was a very expensive business in the past to try and sort out whether you're an employee or a contractor. Now we have a streamlined process, which I think will speed the process up. And whilst it's not perfect, it's a major advance on what we had.